Thank you so much. Good morning, Nigerians, and welcome to FCT Brief. Now, this morning, we turn our focus to Rivers State, where political tensions continue to simmer following the face-off between Governor Similaye Fubara and members of the State House of Assembly. What began as internal disagreements has evolved into a full-blown institutional confrontation, raising fresh questions about governance, loyalty, and the balance of power within the state. At the heart of this standoff are issues of legitimacy, legislative authority, and executive independence, with parallel claims, court interventions, and political alignments shaping the narrative. Many are asking what this dispute means for the democratic stability in Rivers State and the real impact on governance and the people. And to examine the matters arising from this ongoing crisis, we are joined by Chetam Wala, a lawyer and activist. He will help us review the legal, political, and civic implications of the Fubara Rivers Lawmakers confrontation and what lies ahead for the state. Now, Chetam, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Exactly, nice to have you here. Now, let's start this way. Last week, the Chief Judge declined to act on the notice of impeachment submitted to him by the lawmakers. Does that foreclose any further move to impeach the governor? If we put politics aside, are there any constitutional impediments that will not allow the lawmakers to proceed with this move?
Well, if you recall, sometime the week before, the governor and the deputy governor ran to the courts to get an interim order restraining the House of Assembly members from restraining the Chief Judge from setting up the 7-man panel to investigate the alleged allegations of gross misconduct against the governor. And the court did grant that particular order, restraining the Chief Judge from setting up the 7-man panel. And of course, we saw the House of Assembly members approach the Court of Appeal on the said issue. Now, the Chief Judge had written to the Speaker of the House of Assembly, notifying him that he was going to obey the said order of court, and stated clearly that, and also cited instances where such decisions as a court they must obey. Some of us tend to agree with the Chief Judge because we have always said, and also the Court of Appeal in one of the matters have also stated clearly that no matter how erroneous you feel a court decision is, it is a court decision. And to protect our democracy, to avoid anarchy, those court decisions and court orders must be obeyed, irrespective of who is involved or how erroneously one feels that the court order was reached. And don't forget, the Chief Judge of Rivers State is the head of the court in Rivers State. And if the Chief Judge is found to be disobeying court orders that is being given, especially for a court he heads, it simply means that he has opened the floodgates for other persons and other litigants to continue to obey court orders and court decisions. So I think the position and the decision of the Chief Judge in this circumstance is actually a brilliant one, and one to safeguard our democracy. Even if some of us hold the contrary view that the court reached that particular order in error, and that order should not have been given from looking at section 188 sub 10 of the Constitution. Now, this decision by the Chief Judge and the decision by the court does not stop the impeachment process. It temporarily halts the process. Now, what we are waiting for is for the courts to now come up to tell us whether the decision, the order by the court, was properly reached. Because I know this matter will get to the Supreme Court. Whether the order by the court was properly reached. If the court finds and says, yes, what the court did was proper, the matter will now revert back to the High Court, where the High Court will now look at the matter, the matter before it, in its merit, and whatever the decision is, that should be the position we are. Okay. But if the courts down to the Supreme Court get to tell us that the position of the State High Court is actually wrong, I think at that point we will now return back to the Chief Judge going ahead to set up the 7-man panel. So that is the current state of things. So it does not extinguish the the impeachment process. It is just a temporary halt of the process.
It does not extinguish the impeachment process. But your lawyer, at what point do we draw a line? We do have the principle of separation of powers. Can one arm of government stop the other from carrying out its constitutional role? Imagine if there's a situation where there is a court that says the House can no longer pass a budget. Would that ever happen? Or is this just a way to buy time?
Well, I see it as a way to buy time because, truth be told, the courts, yes, we know the courts is empowered by our constitution to interpret the law. But the constitution in itself clearly stated in section 188 sub 10 that the court cannot interfere in an ongoing impeachment process. The court cannot interfere. Unless the impeachment process has been concluded, then there were procedures and processes that were not followed. The court can now call back the process and decide on how the impeachment process was reached. But in this circumstance, what we have seen is the court interfering in the impeachment process. However, we must state clearly that, no matter how we look at it, from what angle we look at it, that is why we have said that there is a need for a total reform in our judiciary. I have continued to advocate for judicial reform because of the things we have seen, especially during this civil crisis. We have seen the court display an attitude that it's sad for our democracy and it's sad for our judiciary, where we see orders and counter orders, where we see a clear-cut denigration of our constitution. It's an unfortunate situation for us, but it's a reality. But to safeguard our society, to safeguard us completely, and for us as a state or as a people not to fall into anarchy, we must at all times obey a court decision. Now, let me also state this. It is only the court that has given that particular order that can vacate its order, or a superior court. It is not by our own opinion or by individual understanding we can now say, okay, this order was erroneous speech. It will just only merely form an opinion. However, those opinions it is only a court that has given that order or a superior court that can actually say, that can actually vacate the same order.
All right.
So in a circumstance, everybody who are parties to that particular order has no option but to obey that order. But how the litigants in the particular suit feels about it, what must be obeyed. And I'm one advocate who can say that in what I'm calling for a reform in our judiciary. I am still of the opinion that no matter how erroneously a judgment is given, to safeguard our society, we must continue to obey decisions and orders of court.
Okay, just because you talked about the needed reform in the judiciary, who should champion this? Is it the NBA? Is it the executive? Is it the judiciary that should champion its own reform? Because we've been talking about the need for a judicial reform, and we've never had it the way we wanted it. So who will push for this kind of judicial reform we're talking about?
Well, it has to be a collective thing. We must not give the responsibility to an arm or to an individual. It has to be the call of all Nigerians. Because let me say this: the failures of the judiciary affects everyone in the society. It doesn't just affect the lawyers. It doesn't affect the executive. It affects everyone. So everybody must be interested in the judicial reform and must continue to demand for a judicial reform in our society. Because when we keep having this situation within our judiciary, it simply means that we are inviting anarchy. When the judiciary is no longer independent, when we can no longer trust the judiciary, trust me, people will no longer go to court to resolve issues. People will rather look for other means to resolving issues. And that creates serious anarchy within our country. So to avoid these issues, all Nigerians must continue to demand for this judicial reform. Because what we have seen lately within our judiciary, it's a sad one for our country. So we must all demand for it. When the chief judge was appointed, some of us had very high hopes that by now, certain measures would have, chief justice was appointed, we're having high hopes that certain measures would have been taken to addressing a few things within our judicial sector. But in all honesty, and to be fair to everyone, what we are seeing in our judiciary today It's not what we had anticipated. So we must all add our voice to this call for a judicial review within for a judicial reform within this nation. Because if things continue this way, it all gets worse than this. Trust me, Nigerians will completely lose trust in our judiciary, and that would mean our country probably itself into serious anarchy.
All right. Chatham, take us through the process of impeachment, like this situation now where you have the courts intervening. If this process is, if the chief judge at the end of the day comes to a panel and the panel sits and the governor is exonerated, can the House of Assembly reactivate the process of impeachment again?
Well, the point is this. If the governor is completely exonerated and he returns back to and he continues with the administration of the state and carries out an action that is considered a gross misconduct and carries out an action that is considered a gross misconduct, the House of Assembly can also bring up an impeachment process against him. The Constitution does not limit the number of times an impeachment process can be carried out against the governor or a deputy governor in the second the cases may be. But the Constitution is actually clear as to how this process should actually be conducted, and which we are hoping that and believing that the legislators, the Legislative Assembly will continue with the process as stated within the Constitution. But I must say clearly that the number of times where a governor can be impeached or a impeachment process can be conferred against the governor 5, 10, 7 times, it's not been stipulated by the Constitution. The Constitution is of the opinion that where the House has seen that, or where the House has considered an action of the governor to be a gross misconduct, then an impeachment process can be preferred against the governor. So at this point, I don't think there is a limit to but the governor a gross misconduct cannot be brought against the governor on the same issue that has been extinguished in a previous impeachment process. Now, you cannot bring the same gross misconduct that you have tried the governor for or raised against the governor previously. You now bring the same thing again for another impeachment process against the governor. That, in my own opinion, cannot fly because it will amount to double jeopardy in the circumstance. So, but as to whether the House can bring impeachment process against the governor multiple times, it is possible. It is allowed within our laws. The law does not restrain them from bringing the impeachment process as many times as they wish to.
Okay, Chatham, whether one is for the governor or for the House of Assembly, I think one thing that Rivers people actually want is a peaceful state, a state that can have good governance. Now, some persons are saying that the governor is relying too much on technical issues because the chief judge gave technical encumbrance. That is why he could not carry out the order, rather than the governor to look at political reconciliation. Now, is it still possible to push for political reconciliation so that when two elephants fight, as they say, the grass will not continually suffer?
Well, I must say that Rivers State and Rivers people have suffered so much during this crisis, and we are the worst hit of this particular crisis. You know, we have had this political reconciliation come and go, and I keep on saying that when you're dealing with a man like the FCT minister, this political reconciliation, if it does not go 100% the way of the FCT minister, it cannot work. I have mentioned this on several occasions. It cannot work. As of today, the only solution to our problem lies in the hands of Mr. President. And the only thing Mr. President can do, it is not these negotiations, because it will not work with the FCT minister. The only thing Mr. President is to call the FCT minister and tell him, stop. That is the only way if you want this crisis in the state to come to an end. But if you want to have a negotiation, the negotiation has to go 100% the way of the FCT minister. Else, you won't actually find peace. And that is the problem we have right now. That's the problem. That's exactly what, so every political solution that has been come up with, the FCT minister wants to have his way 101%. We all know that the fight in Rivers State is not between the House of Assembly and the government. It is between the FCT minister and the governor. And because the House of Assembly are his puppets, the moment He has his agreement with the governor. He calls on them. They rush, they carry out an impeachment process against him. The crisis is re-engineered. We saw him move about everywhere. So we can't have a proper political solution at this point to this issue. We can't.
All right.
The only solution we have now is for the president to clearly call the FCT minister to order. That's all.
All right, Chetan. Can we look at it this way? The governor was elected to do a job in Rivers State, so also the House of Assembly were elected to carry out a job. The minister was not elected; he was an ex-governor. Now, how has it affected the integrity of the House of Assembly in Rivers State that people are insinuating, whether true or not, that somebody is controlling the House from outside? How does that affect the integrity of the Rivers State House of Assembly, that they are not independent?
Now, let me say this. This particular House of Assembly does not have an integrity. They are not representing the people who elected them. They are representing the interests and the opinions of the FCT minister. And it is actually an unfortunate situation. You ask yourself, since they return back to democratic rule after the state of emergency, how many laws have been passed by this House of Assembly? How many issues has the House of Assembly deliberated on that has nothing to do directly with the governor? All the times they have sat since they returned, what progressive decisions have been reached within them? What motions have they moved to help push this state forward? The House of Assembly, this current House of Assembly, does not have integrity. They have no business and no conversation that have integrity. And that is why we have seen them display in the way they have continued to display. That an impeachment process was profound against the government. How many House of Assembly members called the constituency meeting to ask of the opinion of the people which they represent with respect to the impeachment process against the governor? How many of them called the constituency meeting to at least get the opinion of their people? Now, the Ibas administration, during the state of emergency, before Ibas left our state, he gave each of them 350 million as constituency project money. Ask them, how many of them use this money? How many of them have used this money to actually impact in the lives of the people they seek to represent? How many of them? We have not seen anything on the ground. Nothing. But what they're interested in is to continue to destabilize our state. And remember, we hear that some of the issues that have led to this current crisis is because they have asked and requested that the governor gives each of them in a supplementary budget 10 billion naira, which the governor refused. And that is why they have now resumed hostilities against the governor. As compensation for...
These are grave allegations you are bringing to these people. Chetan, these are grave allegations. You initially talked about the 350 million given by the IBAS administration, and now you talked about an insinuation that they demanded for 1 billion or 10 billion for each of them. These are grave allegations. You have proof of this?
Yes. No. It is everywhere in the news now that they received 350 million. They have not denied it now. So it's not even the president of president.
Speculations. Okay.
No. It is not a speculation. It is not a speculation. It is even in the news that they received 350 million as constituency project each, and they have done nothing with it. They cannot deny it. The records are there. They can't deny it. The one that is act that you can call a speculation is the 10 billion they demanded from the governor. That's what you can call a speculation. Okay. But as for the 350 million naira, they collected each from the governor from Ibas. It is there. The records are there. They can't deny it, and that's my problem with all this. You see, I keep saying that as a state, we need to make progress. In the last 3 years, we have not made any form of progress because certain persons are standing our state and they believe that our state belongs to them and they have to call the shots within our state. So if they are unhappy, everybody in the state should be unhappy. The state has not made progress because there's an assembly being controlled by one man. Recall, the FCT minister on several occasions has posted and said, I bought one for everybody. That he bought the phone of everybody. Both at the National Assembly, the governor, the House of Assembly. He has posted on several occasions. How can we have a system where one man will be allowed to buy phones for everybody within the state? And you expect the man not to understand the state and hold the state down like he has done?
because of time, let's make progress. Where does this place the people of Rivers State? Because from the analysis you've given so far, it's like the people have been conquered and they don't have any say in what happens to them. We've left everything to what the House decides, what the governor decides, what the minister decides. Don't we say that power belongs to the people? So what action can the people take to ensure that they have good governance?
Well, the truth of the matter is that it is unfortunate that Rivers people have been docile since this issue started. I can remember, and they have also continued to use state machineries against Rivers people. Because I can remember during the state of emergency, I went to the streets with some comrades to protest against the state of emergency. We were shot at by the Nigerian police that is supposed to protect us. We were shot at. Some of our comrades got injured because of the protest and all that. They are continuing to use fear as an instrumentality against Rivers people. And Rivers people themselves too have become docile. Because I don't understand why 27 presidents in the House of Assembly, one FCT minister, and one governor will hold our state to ransom like this. Who can stand us? That as a people we can't even demand and ask people to look away and resolve the issue or they leave the seat the current of time. Because we are, how many of us, about 8 million Rivers people or thereabout, we have that we are being transcended by this number of persons. And Rivers people are this docile. Everybody is looking for where to tilt towards. For me, I think that the docility of Rivers people have also contributed to this particular issue that we are having in Rivers State, because a lot of those is holding. Because if Rivers people, in their demand for justice, in their demand for fairness, come out and ask and demand for an end of this, I tell you, we'll get an end to it. We all occupy the seat and say no to all these issues that have not brought development to our state. Our state has continued to, nothing has happened in our state in the last 3 years. Nothing, no development. We're not making progress. We're not making progress because certain persons have held us down. It is sad. Every day I cry about our situation here in the state. And these people are being paid daily while we suffer, while our people are being impoverished. And don't forget, they have also used hunger as a tool. Hunger as a tool. Political loyalty as a tool to hold down our people. So it's an unfortunate situation for us. And we are quite saddened by this our own reality. We are saddened by it. So the people must learn to rise. The people must learn to rise. And the courts must also learn to come to the defense of the people.
All right.
They must learn to come to the defense of the people.
All right.
On these issues.
All right, Cheta, you said the people must learn to rise. Now, Rivers State for some time, for some years now, have always been in the news, and it has helped our conversation, just like we are talking about Rivers State now. And there's another issue that is on ground concerning the ruling party in Rivers State. Now, you have two factions of the of APC. There is one that is led by Austin Okocha, and that is loyal to the Minister Wike. And there is another faction, the Emeka Beki, that is loyal to Tonye Cole. Now, this is the same party ahead of 2027. Is it that after the impeachment, we're going to come back to dealing with this issue of which faction should present a candidate for the next election? Because the party, the national body, is recognizing one faction, the court is recognizing another faction. What does it say about our politics in Rivers State again?
Now, this is why we have said that court decision first will be. There is a clear-cut judgment, two judgments in that regard, given to the faction led by Emeka Beki. Two clear-cut judgments given to the faction led by Emeka Beki. That they are the legitimate executive branch of the APC within Rivers State. But what has the APC National done? They have jettisoned the decision of courts and are now recognizing Tony Okocha. There is a court decision that has also set aside the Tony Okocha Congress that was held, that election that was held. But what has the court done? The court, the APC National has also jettisoned that particular decision and are still doing what they feel is right and in their best interest. You see, these are the issues we keep talking about. Because APC as a party is supposed to lead by example. It's supposed to follow the rule of law. But we have seen a circumstance where the party of the president is not abiding by decisions of court, thereby creating for anarchy. This is a clear call for anarchy. That's why we have said that no matter how erroneously you feel that the decision of court has been reached, that decision must, as a matter of must be obeyed.
Does this
So,
have any
in this
consequence?
circumstance,
Does this have any consequence?
I feel that the medical led ESCO remains the proper and legitimate ESCO of the APC within Rivers State.
Now, what are the possible consequences of these? Especially that we're gravitating towards an election. Are there political implications if things are allowed to go on like this without being resolved quickly?
Well, of course, you would have to see the both parties produce governorship candidates and all that. We have heard Tony Kul on several occasions say the leader of APC within Rivers State. And naturally, if the governor has defected to the APC, naturally we know the governor becomes the leader of the party within the state. So we have heard Tony Kul make this statement. So it simply means that in the forthcoming election, we will have two governorship candidates from the APC. But you see, that's why we want the courts to quickly resolve these issues and come up with a decision, a final decision on this particular matter, so that we'll get to lay to rest these particular issues, and so that they will not have the challenges like we saw in 2019, where the APC had no candidate within Rivers State, because at the time some persons went to court challenging the decision of the party, and when they challenged that decision, the judgment came a few days to the election, or a few weeks to the election. And we saw a situation where APC did not have a candidate, they had to resort to a candidate of another political party. And this was not really good for our political system. Right. So it is important that these issues are expeditiously dealt with and resolved, so that we know the position of things and we know where these things are tilted towards, so that we don't have a situation where other nominations are collected and the courts now give the decision that will now revert everything back to status quo. All right,
so just quickly, the National Assembly are just resuming, and how quick do you expect that the Electoral Act will be passed?
The National Assembly is not serious about electoral reforms. They're not serious about passing that Electoral Act. They are only serious about making sure that they protect themselves and get a re-election back to the National Assembly. The way the National Assembly has protected itself in recent times, it's a shame to us as a people and as Nigerians, because the National Assembly has not carried itself like a proper legislative assembly. So be honest with you, because by now we had expected that there should have been a proper electoral reforms. Because if we do not have these electoral reforms, if we don't have the electoral reforms, we should forget 2027 election. Right. Because it will be rigged, like they have continued to rig others. We should forget 2027 elections.
Cheta Mwala, a lawyer, thank you so much. It's always wonderful having conversation with you every time. And you've just said some things. We need electoral reforms, we need judicial reforms. And we hope that the various people that are responsible, institutions responsible, will take the bull by the horn and ensure that Nigerians have what they really deserve. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation this morning. I hand you back to Lagos, where my colleagues are standing by to continue with the program. Just stay with us.
All right. Thank you so much, Eshomamo. That was a beautiful conversation from Abuja. Thank you so much.